Let's call a meeting to order, please. This is the City of Canton Council meeting, July. Ooh, I'm thinking about the warm weather coming up. January the 18th, 2018. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you give the invocation tonight, Joellen?
Oh, I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Generous and loving God, guide us during our deliberation. Touch our lives with your loving kindness. Give us wisdom, patience, and strength of your love. Stir us to faithful action. Bind us together that our decisions may be for the greater good. In Christ, amen.
Thank you. Would like to welcome everyone here tonight. We appreciate you being here. First item, we have some employee recognitions. Chief Mitchell.
Mayor, Council, City Manager, thank you. If I can have Corporal Gregory Ayers and Corporal Jose Soto step forward, please. As I always say, it's important to recognize some accomplishments. And these two supervisors just recently accomplished and were promoted to the rank of corporal and joined our leadership team. So I wanted our community and those in attendance tonight to see the future leadership of the Canton Police Department. So this is basically to recognize them and congratulate them on their accomplishment of being promoted to corporal. They'll be both second in command of the patrol shift that they're assigned to. And again, you're looking at the up-and-coming leaders in the Canton Police Department. So congratulations. Also, we have a couple of new officers that have joined our ranks, Officer Addison Bass and Officer Oscar Haslu. If you could step forward, please. Just recently, Officer Addison Bass, he has just recently graduated the Public Safety Training Center, GIPSTIC, the Police Academy, has a bachelor's degree and is currently assigned to our field training program. Officer Oscar Haslu has 4 years experience, comes to us from another law enforcement organization, and is also in our field training program. During their backgrounds, during their hiring process, and during the time that Officer Bass was in the academy, and also the background investigation we did on Officer Haslu, we see that they're going to be really good fits, not only for the department, but also for our community that we serve. So it's very important that not only they're a good fit for the department, but they're also a good fit for the community and citizens that we engage with every day. So just wanted you to see their faces. These guys will be out here patrolling and interacting with our community, and their main goal is to connect and protect the great city that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations, and welcome to the Canton PD. Thank you. We need to have our public service announcements now. I apologize, I skipped over. We have any?
We do have a few, and thank you, Ms. Gold, for putting these together for me. I appreciate it every meeting. The City of Canton will help you recycle your Christmas trees for free through the end of January. Drop off your live tree without decorations and lights at the Canton City Collection Site located at 2525 Ridge Road, Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. through the end of January. For those who want to begin the new year by cleaning out, another dumpster day for Canton residents is coming up on February 3rd from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Canton City Hall. February 3rd, dumpster days. So I'm sure we've got a lot to donate to those dumpsters after Christmas and Christmas trees. Cherokee County Arts Center. The Arts Center presents a solo art show by Stephen Lester showcasing his love for action-oriented sports art through January 26th in the gallery. Cherokee County History Museum, ongoing Mapping Cherokee, featuring the 20th century map collection of Lat Ridgeway in the Cherokee County History Museum. The Canton Theater has Nonsense, January 18 through 28. The musical presented by Lola Storytellers at 2:30 and 7:30 p.m. and tickets are $15 and $18. Thank you.
Anyone else have any announcements? Thank you, Ms. McGrew. Okay. The agenda for consideration. Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made to our agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Grant seconded the motion. Mr. Young made the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you. Okay. We've got to make sure this works. Is that working? Can you hear that? I did. It's on. Does that work better? Can you hear that? Okay. We'll go with that. Is anybody ready for springtime? This has been one winter, hasn't it, so far? And when you think about it, it's only not even half over yet, theoretically, you know. So hopefully we'll have an early spring. But usually I enjoy winter very much, but we've had about enough, I think, this time. It's ready for spring. I'm really pleased to be able to report to you tonight on the state of our city, our goals for 2018, as well as the challenges that we have going forward. 2017 was an excellent year for our city. We continued the efficient delivery of city services and began new initiatives and projects to benefit the residents and businesses of our city. One of the most important achievements, I feel, was the consolidation of our fire department with that of the county. Not only were we able to continue with an efficient fire department, but we gained an ambulance station downtown. In the agreement, we also got the Jones Building and 45 acres of land for a park along the Etowah River just east of the Etowah River Park. Perhaps the most important benefit of the fire consolidation, however, was the savings that we will realize over the next few short years. Public safety is and will continue to be the most important objective of this city. This past March, we saw the opening of our new Northside Hospital Cherokee, providing not only regional health care, but the momentum for extensive development in that area. 2017 saw the opening of the Etowah River Park Trail connecting with Heritage Park. This is a major connection in what will become an extensive trail system for our city. We saw a new playground equipment put in place at both Brown Park and Etowah River Park, including playground equipment for all abilities. We had a ribbon cutting on the new playground equipment and restoration of Burge Park out on Chrysler Street. This past year, we engaged Hayes James Engineering to begin the process of extending the trail from Etowah River Park under Exit 20 and into the 45 acres that we acquired from the county. I am hopeful that this trail extension will be completed this year. 2017 saw the unveiling of a new city logo, which has received much praise. It symbolizes the importance of the Etowah River to this city. This river is a tremendous asset to the city, and very few cities have one. And it possesses a tremendous potential for our city. The new Canton brand was awarded an American Graphic Design Award in the Branding and Identity Programs category. So that logo has been recognized. After many years, 2017 saw the beginning of the construction of the second entrance into Laurel Canyon. As you can see, it has a ways to go, but it has begun. After probably 15 years, close to that it should have been done many years ago. But it's a start, and it will be done. Restoration of the Jones Building began this past fall, as most of you know, and continues. This Phase 1 project included the restoration of the exterior to a 1930s look, a new roof, and demolition of all the temporary interior walls that were installed throughout the years since it was acquired by the county back in the 80s. Phase 2 will begin now, especially in light of the fact that the council has set as one of its goals for 2018 the development of the City of Canton Cultural Arts Center. This decision was made after much discussion at our recent retreat in Columbus. The lights in the trees downtown, as I am sure you have all seen, were restored, giving the downtown area a warm and welcoming atmosphere. Those lights have really helped the downtown area. 2017 saw the beginning of a water and wastewater master plan with the assistance of our consultants, Black and Veatch. This study is nearing completion and should reveal our water and sewer needs over the next 30 years into the future. This study will provide an estimate of the cost to provide those needs and will be followed by a rate study which will tell us what our customers can expect to pay for the service and those needed facilities. Once again, 2017, we continued our aggressive street paving program by paving more streets and budgeting more funds for transportation improvements. I was so proud of this city, our citizens and council members, this past March, when our council unanimously passed an ordinance banning the retail sales of puppies and kittens. Canton was the first city in the state of Georgia and the 223rd city in the United States to do so. This ordinance helps to discourage puppy mills, and it will encourage the adoption of shelter and rescue animals. Since Canton passed this ordinance, 7 additional cities in Georgia have followed Canton's example and passed similar ordinances, including 4 cities here in Cherokee County. I would encourage our county government to consider a similar ordinance. Routine administrative duties of our city staff included the issuing of 559 residential building permits in 2017. That is up 6.1% over 2016. And some 83 commercial building permits were issued in 2017. We also last year saw the opening of 6 new restaurants in downtown Canton and a total of 5 other new retail businesses in downtown. We continued to reduce our long-term debt in 2017, paying off the golf course debt. Did you see the golf course? As well as paying off Series 2002 water and sewer debt and reducing our overall long-term debt by more than $1 million while at the same time and continuing to pursue a progressive list of other projects and efforts. A committee of 12 citizens to study our alcohol ordinance was created early last fall with the goal of clarification and simplification of our alcohol ordinance. Recommendations from the committee were presented to the full council in December, and this council will consider their recommendations over the next few months. and the private restoration of the historic Canton Cotton Mills office building and the historic Canton Grammar School began and is nearing readiness for tenants. A building permit is expected this week for Panera Bread to be located at the corner of West Main Street and Academy Street. It is anticipated that construction will be complete in less than 180 days. Don't hold me to that, but that's what we're told, and we believe it's going to happen. So real progress is always slower than we would like for it to be. Our Community Development Department added a new planner in 2017 to the staff, and we began our 10-year comprehensive plan update and acquired a new smart board for presentations. 2017 saw an upgrade to our website, and we expanded our social media presence as well. These are just a partial list of the successes and improvements realized in 2017. As you can see, this city is on the move. But this mayor and council cannot accomplish these successes alone. The work that you have seen in 2017 is the result of a collaborative effort of council, various volunteer citizen committees, boards, and city staff. To each of these, I say thank you for a job well done. And to our city manager, I say a special thank you. He has worked closely with this mayor and council to keep the city moving forward. I know he must often look at his cell phone and say, oh no, the mayor is calling again. But he's always courteous and respectful and always there when needed. Thank you, Mr. Peppers. And I would like to thank Julie as well for putting up with all the interruptions. 2018 also promises to be an exceptional year. At our recent retreat in Columbus, this council developed some goals for this year, some priorities. Basically, there were 5 priorities developed. First is the Jones building that I've just mentioned. But we could see by this time next year or late this year the opening of the Canton Cultural Arts Center. I expect that's going to happen. It's going to take some work, but it's going to happen. Second priority was a Riverwalk project. This is a long-range project, but one of which the planning and programming will begin this year, and hopefully an overall trail system plan complete by the end of this year. Reevaluate our overall approach to planning and development in the city was another priority. We need to reconsider our overall zoning districts to perhaps reduce the number of zoning districts and simplify our zoning ordinance, and look more toward infill within our city than toward the annexation and zoning of peripheral properties. The completion of our water and wastewater master plan and rate study should occur this year, which we began this past fall. And finally, we need to energize the Canton Housing Authority to improve the effectiveness of the authority in providing for the needed housing, and to provide for and encourage home ownership for those utilizing the services of the Housing Authority. It is clear that this city is moving forward both in the efficient delivery of services as well as the protection of the qualities that make this city a great place to live and do business. Perhaps one of the greatest services our administrative staff can render this city is the careful and conservative expenditure of our citizens' tax dollars. And once again this year, Canton was recognized by the Government Finance Officers Association for its excellence in financial reporting. We are good stewards of Canton's tax dollars and other funds. As our city moves into the future, each of us will have a vision for our city, ideas of how we perceive our city will look. Hopefully, the individual visions of the council and the citizens of Canton will be the basis for a city that we and future residents can continue to be proud of. However, I have a vision for this city that I'd like to share with you tonight. And I hope that you will consider this vision and accept the vision in the spirit in which it was intended. It's a vision of failure, and it involves all aspects of city life and services your city provides. I have a vision that our streets and roadways are so clogged with traffic that it's difficult and almost impossible to travel through our city. Deterioration of our streets and potholes are common from a lack of maintenance. Highway 20 East, although 4 lanes, is far worse than today. State Route 140 and I-575 are little more than parking lots. I have a vision that our parks, once beautiful and well-maintained, are littered and dirty, with unsavory characters lurking in the shadows of the trees. These parks are no longer safe or enjoyable for our children and families. I have a vision that blight is pervasive as the whole city is deteriorating. I have a vision that our water and sewer systems are inadequate with no plans for maintenance or future needs. Decisions of our government officials are more about control than efficiency of operation. Water outages of clean drinking water are routine, and the smell of sewage spills is evident across the city. Yes, I have a vision that water and sewer rates for our customers are unbelievably high. I have a vision that public safety is sorely lacking. Citizens are afraid to walk the streets and sidewalks after dark, with crime and gang activity prevalent throughout the city. Drive-by shootings and drug deals are commonplace and almost accepted as a way of life. I have a vision that derelicts are sitting or laying along the sidewalks in downtown, leaning against buildings with a brown paper bag wrapped around their alcohol of opportunity rather than choice. But not to worry, when the bottle is empty, it is only a short crawl away to more booze at one of our 10 bars in a 2-block area. Tattoo shops and massage parlors occupy most of the rest of the buildings, except for a couple of pool halls on North Street. I have a vision. There is plenty of parking in downtown. No one wants to come downtown. I have a vision that property taxes are unbearable, and the senior homestead exemption is gone. Those on fixed incomes find it hard to survive in Canton. I have a vision that the Etowah River is polluted with garbage floating under the city's bridges. Little or no enforcement has allowed development along the river and drastically diminished the physical and aesthetic qualities of the Etowah River. The once clean and beautiful river is no longer the city's most important natural resource. I have a vision that the city's lost much of its historical integrity by demolishing historic buildings because it is perceived that it is cheaper to tear them down and build more cheaply constructed buildings. I have a vision that the city is financially insolvent with a massive debt burden, and it was so easy to get that way. It's far easier to borrow than to pay back. I have a vision that the Hickory Log Creek Reservoir, through a lack of maintenance, now poses a real and imminent threat of a dam break, with the safety of thousands of residents and businesses in real jeopardy. I have a vision that home prices have fallen dramatically since the quality of life in the city is undesirable. I have a vision that the city has allowed the development of so many poor quality residential developments that slums are evident from a lack of maintenance. Many single-family developments are now rental properties and are managed by landlords more interested in rental income than keeping their properties safe and clean for their tenants. I have a vision that we no longer have the trusted elected officials and staff running our city government, but rather corruption is rampant and leads the newscast with such frequency that it's almost no news at all. Personal interests have replaced true public service. Yes, I have a vision for this city, but it is not those failures that I have just mentioned. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Those potential failures are, however, my fear and the challenge this city, its current and future councils, and you, the citizens, must face. And we must meet that challenge so that a vision of failure never becomes our reality. Progress is not unstoppable. Progress can stop. The one thing that is unstoppable is change. We will change. But as we change, our challenge is to direct that change to those things that make our city better. We must always seek quality over quantity. Being bigger doesn't always mean better. We must be selective. New developments must enhance the quality of life here in Canton, or we must say no. Karen Slaughter, in her book, Good Daughter, has a couple of lines that remind me of my first days as mayor 10 years ago. She had lived away from North Georgia for quite a number of years, but had to return for a family emergency. When she got back to her North Georgia home, things had changed. And she says 2 decades of progress had done its damage to the North Georgia landscape. Nothing had been left untouched. Shopping centers had sprung up like weeds. Billboards peppered the landscape. Even the once lush, wildflower-lined medians were gone. A massive reversible toll lane cut through the center of the interstate. Do we really want to pave over paradise? We must be careful about what we call progress. So many cities seem to slip into a negative, irreversible direction in the name of progress. Although we have many challenges, I am even more optimistic and excited today about the future of our city as I was when I began serving as your mayor 10 years ago. The future of this city and the realization of its vision is up to you, the citizens. You are the ultimate decision maker. You have the opportunity to let your voices be heard. You select the leadership of this city, a leadership composed of council members who truly do listen to its citizens. Your support and input to this and future councils is vital to keep our city moving forward. We should not seek to become anything other than Canton. We have the capability to shape our city to what fits best for us. We should not seek to become a Woodstock, a Ball Ground, Atlanta, or any other city. These cities have set their own standards or followed those set by others. We are Canton, and only we can define who we are and what we will become. The city of Canton has grown from a small village mill town to a city of more than 26,000 people and growing. As citizens of Canton, we have it all: restaurants, shopping, parks and recreational facilities, good streets, a regional health care center, and good, efficient government services, all with a hometown community feeling. As we look into the future, we must keep an eye on the past and take pride in the progress that we have made. I'd like to leave you with one thought that is very important to our city's future, and that thought is, bigger isn't better. Better is better. The qualities of our city that we care so deeply about and the qualities that make our city unique can be lost in the name of progress. Our challenge as our city grows and moves forward is to keep those qualities as the foundation on which we build our future. We will meet that challenge. Okay. Moving right along. You have in your agenda package the minutes from our January 4th meeting. Are there any corrections or changes to be made to those?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Estes seconded that motion. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members.
Abstain since I was not present for that meeting.
Mr. Young abstains. Okay, all members, with the exception of Mr. Young, voted in favor of the motion. Okay, we don't have anyone that has signed up for our 10-minute public input period, so we will move along to old business. Discussion and possible action of buy cash online report purchase system. Chief Mitchell, you gonna handle anything else on that? Are there any questions to that? I think he discussed that pretty thoroughly at our last our work session on January 4th. This is a piece of equipment or a contract to help make reporting and getting traffic reports and accident reports and so forth more expeditiously, as I understand. Is that sort of what it is? Okay. And actually, you know, we take our police department very seriously, and when they have a need, I can almost assure you they're probably going to get almost anything they ask for. Do we have any other discussion? Have a motion. Ms. McGrew made a motion to approve. Mr. Goodman seconded that motion. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members are voting for the motion. Thank you, Chief. Okay, discussion and possible action of renewing the demand services agreement with Atkins North America, Inc. Mr. Hatabian is here for any questions. This was also discussed at the work session thoroughly, but do we have any questions or comments regarding that?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, and Mr. Estes seconded that motion. Mr. Goodman made the motion. Mr. Estes seconded the motion. Any other? Mr. Grant has a question or comment.
Yes, and Mr. Hatabian, I know we discussed this at the last meeting, and you cited several examples of how we've used demand services, I think on the trail system with Adkins and a couple other projects that were pretty substantial, I think, in the examples you cited last time. And I think in thinking about those since the last meeting, some of those projects were, you know, over $100,000 or more. And my thoughts were just, are those the types of projects that, you know, should go out for bid when they are at that amount? I know that they always, as you said, come before council. But my question was just, again, kind of due diligence and always in taxpayers' money for the demand contracts is, should we consider, you know, an amount for a demand contract not to exceed before going out to bid in cases that are substantial or that substantial, those types of projects? Or
that's certainly something you can do. I'll just say that on the consulting side and doing RFPs, they take a lot of time. And on the consulting side, you get they're more cognizant of how they spend their marketing dollars, and you may not get a lot of people bidding on these projects. More and more municipalities and authorities are going to these demand services. You know, DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, Water Authority. I don't know if Cherokee does them or not. But again, they're just, you know, kind of placeholders. But you know, you can certainly either set if you want to set a maximum amount per task order, that's fine. But going RFPs on, say, for example, a $100,000 project, you may not get the firms that you really want. But
I do recall instances, and correct me if I'm wrong, where we have gone through and gotten contracts or bids from demand services providers, and then they were presented to council, and then council asked that we did get bids, and then you have to go back and write RFPs or do bids, which I think takes more time. And I wonder if in those instances would it have been taken less time if we'd done RFPs to begin with on that. And so I'm wondering if, again, if a certain amount is appropriate. It may defeat the purposes of these demand contracts, but
I would be more inclined to say, if you have a project before you do something like that, is maybe we could discuss whether you want to move forward with this as an RFP rather than limiting a task order.
Mr. Peppers, you had something?
I was just going to say, in a lot of cases, it has to do with a project and how quickly you need to move on a project as opposed to the amount, so to speak. What we have traditionally done is if we have a task order, we bring it to council. If it's above a certain amount and it's not something that we're going to be working on. So if we had an issue as it related to water and sewer and it was an emergency item, we need to take care of it, we may reach out on a task order and get the company started on it. But in most cases, like for instance, the trail, we brought that back to council for the approval anyways. And if you're not comfortable with that vendor or you think it's in the best interest of the city to go out with an RFP, then of course we would do that. But sometimes it's based on how quickly we can move into a project. Specifically, Atkins, for instance, has done a trail section for us before. If we needed to add a small trail section or make an improvement somewhere, we might ask them to do that work as part of a task order. If we were laying out an entirely new trail, we may want to go through an RFP process.
I think the concern I have is when you bring a task order to us, I'm not sure that I nor this council, by and large, knows whether you're getting a good deal or not, unless you got two or three something to compare with. If it's just, this is going to cost $75,000, well, that may be a really, really good price, or it may be a really, really bad price. I mean, how do you know?
Again, I think it's based on the size of the project and how quickly we're trying to get the project done, whether it's an emergency or it's a stopgap type project, or if it's an investigation type project where we need, like Brown and Caldwell, for instance, the next one, they work on our I&I study. They're part of a bigger project, but we may need to investigate something as it relates to sewer, and we don't know what the issue is without looking into it a little bit. I see the demand services as more of getting us started on something so that we can determine whether or not it's something we want to move forward on as a project, and then at that point we can go out to RFP for the larger part of it.
Could you not get them started on it without them being on a list of demand services? I mean, all you got to do is pick up the phone, right?
You could, but we agree to a set price up front on demand services, so we know we're not going to exceed that hourly rate.
And typically on a task order, we would negotiate the scope and price before we would move forward with it anyway. So we do have the ability. That's the one advantage you have with the demand services versus an RFP, is if you get a proposed scope and budget and you don't like it, you can go back with them and you can discuss, well, I don't think we need this much for this item, or you can get rid of this. Whereas an RFP, once you put it out to bid, then you're kind of locked into that amount. So you have a little more flexibility to negotiate prices. And then, if you just can't come to agreement, you can either, not do it or go to another firm that you have on.
Mr. Young?
Yes. Now, it's my understanding, too, one of the reasons for these and for naming a particular firm is it's someone that you have already gained some trust with, that you, by reputation and experience, you're basically pre-qualified them as a trustworthy vendor so that you're very comfortable that they're not going to rip you off.
That's true, and also it's also looking at some of the upcoming potential projects that we have, and we know that these firms, can do that work. So yes, it's a combination of both of those things.
Mr. Grant?
And I do understand the emergency projects and those, and sort of the task orders on projects where we've had partners that have already been working on those. Those make sense to me. But I think and you mentioned we have some upcoming projects. And I guess what I'm just looking for is some simple checks and balances in there, and maybe on these upcoming projects, if there is, before we start them, maybe a decision by council, do you want this to go out for RFP, or because it's a potential sizable project, or should we, is this appropriate for demand services? That may save some time before you get an estimate from a demand service supplier and then come to council and then say, no, we want you to go off.
We can certainly do that, and with our lines of communication, I can get order of magnitude costs before we move forward, and if it's questionable, we can certainly bring it to council. A lot of the costs basically come from experience.
Do you think that would be more efficient than setting a limit for that?
I would.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I'm looking for there. So.
Okay. I think we have a motion and a second on this. So is there any other discussion or questions regarding this matter? Okay. If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you. Discussion, possible action renewing the demand service agreement with Brown and Caldwell. Same situation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Yon made the motion. Mr. Goodwin seconded that motion. Any other discussion about that one? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. One more. Let's see. One more. I think we have. Okay, that's the only.
Yeah,
That was the only two of those, right?
I wasn't sure what we did with this one. I mean, we brought it up last meeting, and it's just more of an approval to, I guess, work in the right of way with as part of these projects.
Yeah. Do you? I think the only concern I would love to have all of them 15 feet or 10-foot sidewalks or whatever they are, but we just didn't want it to look kind of weird that you got parked a sidewalk or whatever it is along the right-of-way of Bluff Parkway that's 10 feet wide, and then all of a sudden it drops to 5.
Right.
You know, I don't know what the possibilities would be for us to maybe amend our site plan or requirements within that Bluffs development to meet that 10-foot requirement throughout, as long as it was on the Bluffs Parkway right-of-way or something. You know, internal to their development, it certainly wouldn't make any difference to us one way or the other, at least to me. Mr. Grant?
That's basically what was my concern also, so I think it just an abrupt or at least a long transition, but if it was just along the Bluffs Parkway right-of-way and not internal, I mean, I think if they all could be consistent, that would be my preference. So.
Ms. McGrew, you have something?
I echo that as well. I would like to see the sidewalks consistent. And what is the width exactly that is the proposed sidewalk?
I believe it's 10 feet.
10 feet. That's what I thought. And the existing sidewalk is what?
I think it's 5.
5.
So they would have to basically go do construction in our right-of-way, and that's all we're looking for is approval to work in the right-of-way.
Can you explain their proposed transition from 10 to 5? Will it just be an abrupt?
I'm not sure where the sidewalks stop, to be honest with you.
There's a book about that, where the sidewalk ends.
I'm looking at, from the plans I've seen, I believe they start somewhere near the first roundabout and go pretty much north to the last roundabout. So it's in that stretch that they're proposing to work. I'm not sure what's south of that first roundabout, if anything. I'd have to go back and see what the transition looks like. They may be stopping at, for example, at one of the roundabouts, and then when they go across it, it may be back to a 5, but I'd have to double check on the plans.
Mr. Estes?
So two things. One was, what does one do with a 10-foot sidewalk? I had to go home and measure it.
That's wide.
I don't know. I'm not sure if they were. I think they were looking at possible golf carts because they have several different pods of this development, and I think their amenities area is being proposed where those cluster homes are, and so it would allow people to, get around to the amenities area, I believe.
Got it.
So.
And then my second thing was, I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with it. So around the roundabouts, it looks like it's narrower, so it's not always. So I'd echo the point. If it's consistent, I think that would probably be more appealing there.
I'll be honest with you. I've got the plans and I haven't reviewed them yet.
Got it.
So I haven't really gotten into that level of detail.
Mr. Grant?
Am I correct in assuming that after this development, the residential portion, the majority of the rest of the development on the Bluffs Parkway right now is approved, would be more in the commercial realm.
Yes, sir. After the residential component, the 750 units, there's approximately 150 acres of Bluffs property still available for office, retail, technology, limited light manufacturing.
Okay. So it wouldn't be like if we did change that master plan or that development to 10-foot sidewalks on right-of-way, wouldn't be like other residential development partners would have to, construct that. It'd be more commercial entities, which I think is more realistic
Right.
to expect them to do so. So, again, I would like to propose that we accept this and then change the future requirements along the right-of-way of Bluffs to 10 feet.
What would it take to change that requirement within the Bluffs?
Staff would advertise a master plan amendment for the Bluffs property. Would carry it to the Planning Commission for their recommendation on to City Council for a final decision.
I think we ought to really get that going and have that as something that we're pursuing here as a council. So
Staff will get started on that, Mr. Mayor,
Okay,
council
okay.
members. It's
But
our
I-
understanding that the home builder is proposing 10-foot sidewalks even inside, interior, along the residential streets also. And
yeah, that's a big sidewalk. I mean, it's definitely
It was
got to be golf
indicated,
cart.
the reason for that is golf carts and accessibility to the one amenity area that's going to be built for multiple sections of that residential community.
Okay. Anyone else have anything?
Allowing sidewalks to be expanded by 5 feet, would that encroach into the buffer of the setbacks from the right-of-way, or would it all be extended?
I believe it's all within the right of way as it is. But
So
again,
that it wouldn't encroach, the right-of-way would still stay the same as the buffers, and
Yeah,
the setbacks would still stay the same.
I'm almost positive, but I'd have to double check on that.
Okay. Did you make a motion on that one? Okay.
I'd like to move that we allow construction and modification of sidewalks within the city right-of-way along the Bluffs Parkway.
Okay, we have a second. Mr. Goodwin seconded Mr. Grant's motion. Any other discussion or questions? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Okay, item E, discussion and possible action to annex 23.96 acres along Canton Road as requested by Pacific Group. Mr. Patton, are there any? I'm sure there are some questions here. I believe the council got the answers to some of the questions that were asked regarding that, and I believe the answer there is a maximum of 49 single-family lots, 8 acres of open space, and 6 of those 8 will be undisturbed area. Minimum square footage for a one-story home is 1,800 square feet, and two-story minimum is 2,200 square feet as proposed. There would be a 100-foot undisturbed buffer along the frontage of Con with an exception of any roadway and utility connections. They have reached an agreement with the Board of Education, and not that is a mandate from the city, but to pay $350 per residential unit at the time of the final plat is paid for the school system. The city of Canton would purchase water as proposed from the Cherokee Water and Sewer Authority and provide water to the development. Via the master meter. Let's see, no land disturbance permit should be issued until that agreement with between the city and the Cherokee Water and Sewer Authority was complete. The front facade of each home would include a minimum of 75% masonry, that being brick or stone. This would, as proposed, would be a gated community with private streets. I would, the only other item that I guess the answer that was no was that they didn't feel that they could do a variety of orientation as it regards garages on the houses. And it's my understanding that most of these lots are going to be 8,000 square foot. Minimum size would probably be 7,500, and
Yeah.
most lots would be a minimum of 8,000 square feet. And in R4 zoning, there's 0 side setback and a 10-foot separation between buildings, right?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. The applicant has stipulated.
Does that not give room to, would that not give room on an 8,000 square foot lot to have an in driveway or another
The
orientation?
minimum lot width for the R4 zoning district is 40 feet. If they had some 60-foot lots or 70-foot lots, it would be easier to get the turning radius relative to side entry garages.
The site plan that is shown, the preliminary site plan shown, they look like rectangular lots. And they look like there is a reasonable relationship between the width of the lot and the length of the lot. Now, I could understand that you wouldn't want a 40-foot lot that was 200 feet long for an 8,000 square foot lot. I mean, that just wouldn't work. But if it were, you know, I would assume that 40 feet is the minimum and probably near the street or something. I don't know, but
Yes, sir, that is the minimum. Would you be amenable to 25% side entry, 30% side entry?
I think the problem is the side entry requires at least 30 feet of driveway space to make it reasonable for an in-driveway garage. And so you're talking 85 to 90-foot wide lots are typically your minimum lot width to be able to accommodate side entry.
so, okay,
It's not achievable on this side.
okay.
Even though we are wider than the minimum requirements.
Okay. I'd have to see it on paper, but I'll take your word for it. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that in some of the developments, such as Summer Walk, which is on the north side of Fate Con, there are some side entry garages on smaller lots, and those have some very, very tight turning radiuses, and there have been problems and issues with some of those side entry garages with some of those lots.
Now, the driveway can be right against the property line, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're just trying to get some variety in that and make it look a little better than just have everything shotgun straight into a garage totally. I think, you know, it looks better if you got a little bit of variety in there, different orientations.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Estes, you have something? Yeah.
Just a general question about I know you had proposed it at the last meeting, the gated community. Just the thought there, what's the?
Well, number one, the infrastructure behind that gate is not city maintained, and we don't have to worry about paving the street and doing anything else. And it also, you know, in some cases, I think it's a selling point. The security part is a selling point. Now, some would disagree with that, but I think that it gives a certain atmosphere, I think, to that community, to me, that maybe the lack of a gate on a small community like that would have.
Got it. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, this annexation request is for 23.96 acres. It is on the south side of Fate Con Road and east of the intersection of Bluffs Parkway and Fate Con Road. And you did read off the stipulations that the Pacific Group has already agreed to.
Let me ask this. Would it be fair to say that, make sure of this, that all the infrastructure behind the gate would be privately maintained? I mean, if it's private, I don't know how we could theoretically enter there, or shouldn't, whether we could or not.
There are other private gated communities in which water and sewer is public and publicly maintained within the city now.
I know that's the case.
Yes, sir.
I do know that's the case. I just don't know if that is the way it should be. I just have when you have a private community, to me, that is what it says. It's private. And for the city to, enter when theoretically I don't know that they have the right to go through a gate. They may have an easement that they could walk on, a 20-foot easement, go through the woods or something, but I'm not sure they got a legal right to.
Our current language in the development regulations does not specify that with a gated community, the utilities behind the gate would be privately maintained.
Does it say they'll be publicly maintained?
It does not address it. Generally, utilities are
I would assume that
maintained.
if it said it's private, that would be an automatic clue that it's not public. If you got a private community, it shouldn't. That's just me. Who else? Anybody else have a comment?
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to speak to the annexation.
Sure.
Are we going to cover that first, the annexation?
Well, actually, we are. We're talking about whether or not we would annex.
Based on all of that, too.
Sure.
This property is already surrounded by city property, is that correct?
That is correct.
Based on that, I'd like to make a motion to annex this property into the city.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to annex the property. Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Grant.
I did have one question concerning the master meter and purchasing water from Cherokee County Water and Sewer Authority. And it says that the land disturbance permit will not be issued until the agreement is completed. Does that mean that if there's not an agreement reached, that it wouldn't be allowed to move forward, the development?
That is correct. If there's no agreement that could be reached between City Council and the Cherokee County Water and Sewer Authority board in regards to this property and the provision of water, then the property owner applicant would have to come back before City Council to amend this condition to be able to move forward.
Because I know that was one of our concerns about, trying to, any other future annexations, of trying to make sure we had both water and sewer. So thank you.
Yeah, and the fact that, you got two different entities there, the Water and Sewer Authority and the city there, that I think it would be a bad move to do like what Town Mill is, and that is where we bill the sewer only, and the Water Authority bills the water. I mean, we're in a losing proposition on that one, I can tell you. You need the water. You need to be able to bill that water to offset some of the cost of the sewer.
Master meter would take care of that.
Oh,
Right?
yeah. We just need to make sure that
Yeah.
we can get to that point. Absolutely, it would take care of it. It'd be good. All right, we have a motion and a second for the annexation part of this. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Now, next item is the possible action on Planning Commission recommendation to zone 23.96 acres located along Faith Con Road R4 with conditions as requested by Pacific Group. I think this is the list that we would have. But go ahead, Mr. Grant.
Yes, I was just confirming that the conditions would be the conditions that they agreed to per this list.
Okay, now,
And-
if one thing that this does say here, this is where it depends on what we want to do. It says, City of Canton to purchase water from Cherokee Water and Sewer Authority and provide water service to individual homeowners. This would mean that, concurring with this, that we would be going behind the gate, I assume. I don't know if that's what that means or not. I assume that's what that means, so.
So this is in lieu of a master meter?
No, it
Or-
means we'd still have the master meter, I guess, that we would be buying. No, we wouldn't need the master meter, would we, on that? If you're gonna supply it, then you wouldn't have a master meter, I guess.
Right. Could we do a master meter instead and not have to go behind gates?
Does it not say via a master meter? I guess it says 2 individual homeowners via a master meter. Is that not?
Okay, this is in, it would be, we would be buying potentially wholesale from the Water and Sewer Authority, right, at a master meter.
So we wouldn't be going behind the gate reading meters, correct?
Well, that was my thought, is that we wouldn't be going behind the gate, but we would be supplying to them at whatever rate there through that master meter. That's how it would be billed.
Mm-hmm. Is that how we, like in, say, River Green, how is that done?
That is the way River Green works, isn't it, Mr. Peppers?
Part of it.
Master meter, and we do the billing?
That-
Without the water?
That's correct.
That is
The
correct.
difference is in River Green, since it's all outside the gate, we manage the lines and maintain everything behind the, in the neighborhood also.
But they don't have a gate. They're not gated.
Correct.
Those streets are all public.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
Do we have any other gated communities that are master metered, or is this the first?
This will be the first.
No.
So if we have a master meter on a gated community, is there a need to go behind the gate to read meters?
The city maintains water and sanitary sewer lines within Soleil at Laurel Canyon, which is behind the gate. There is not a master meter set up in regards to the provision of that service. And Mr. Hatabian can address the issues relative to maintenance behind gates.
If I understand this right, in this particular case, the master meter would be for billing, for buying water from the water authority, but the city would maintain the lines and read all the meters.
Even though we would be going in on private streets, and even though if that line breaks, we've got to repair their private streets.
That's, everything is written, that's the way it is now, yeah. There's actually a utility easement, access easement, that basically is the width of the right-of-way.
That's the way it's handled within Soleil is with the utility
Well, I
easement.
know that. I understand how that's handled.
Now, the difficulty you run into with that is it's from a single-family home, aspect. You'll need an HOA, and they're going to be billed through the master meter. And so now you have all these homes using whatever rate they're going to have to sub-meter it. Well, I don't know if they have to sub-meter it. They have to sub-meter on apartments, but we have nothing written about sub-metering single-family homes. So, you get one house at the end of the street that, doesn't pay its water bill or something, or the HOA doesn't pay it, and they just shut off the water, and so now you get all the community with no water, even though they're paying it as part of their HOA fees. So, yeah, and then sewers.
Well, how would you do that with an apartment? Wouldn't you do the same thing with an apartment building?
Apartment building's a little different because everything is sub-metered. Well, at least the new ones are, but
Sub-metered by what do you mean by that?
meaning all the individual apartments have a meter.
Right. So
So-
if all individual houses had a meter, what would you do?
Well, but see, they're read by a third party. So the sub-meters would be read by either the HOA or another company or something, and they're billed individually that way. So it's it's pretty unique to have a master meter for billing on a single family, on a residential subdivision. It's done quite frequently with apartments and shopping centers and things of that nature, but not too often I've seen it on single-family homes. And sewer's a whole other issue.
Part of the issue related to sewer is, God forbid that there be a sewer break. They do happen. These are new lines, that sort of thing. But if it's privately operated, someone's going to have to go in there and fix it. And if is it fixed?
So there's really
state-
no real incentive to even be gated, really. The only thing is the streets, and if the water line breaks or if a sewer line collapses, we got to go in and repair those streets.
Not necessarily. I mean, if you
Oh,
have
you're not going to leave that break, are you? Not if it's your line, you're not.
Well, you can repair the line. You can have either an agreement with the HOA saying we'll be responsible for repairing the utility, but the HOA is responsible for either repaving or re-landscaping any repairs.
Oh, that would seem, that, considering the alternatives, that would seem like something we really needed to do. If you're going to put meters in bill and go in and deal with that, I think that would definitely be something you'd need to do. That's a good point, yeah. Anyone else? Let's see. Mr. Grant, you have anything?
No, if we did what you just said, would that have to be a condition, or is that something done through the?
Well, I guess you'd have to.
You should state it as a condition.
We don't have an ordinance that does that.
No.
You would have to state it as a
Or
condition.
if there is an HOA that's even.
You can have conditions that require on an HOA that will work through the agreements of utility access. We will have an HOA, and we're happy to
Okay.
have that agreement in place just to be prior to any sort of.
Okay. Now that helps. Thank you, Dave. That helps. Do we need to maybe ask Ken to restate that? Has anyone made a motion? Yeah, I'm getting off on it here now.
No, I'm just, what would that, stated as a motion be that the city would be responsible for the utility lines only and the HOA be responsible for landscaping and road construction maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
So that would just be added to the one about the water meter. You would just say the city would be responsible for utility lines only. And the HOA, what Mr. Brandt just said, HOA would be responsible for the street and landscaping repairs.
I just asked one question. This is all under the assumption that the water authority is going to grant or go forward.
Correct.
Yes, it is.
Correct.
Right.
As I say before.
And if they don't, we're all back here talking again.
Yeah, then
Right.
then it's probably very similar to what Town Mill and Summerwalk is, where
Or not.
the water authority bills the individuals directly, and we just, bill the sewer charges. They actually get two bills, people in Town Mill and.
Are you familiar with how Lake Arrowhead gets their water now? Are you familiar with how Lake Arrowhead gets their water and how they bill?
I've heard something about that, and they're kind of in a tough situation.
Well, when the county ran that water line there, I think they just gave a master meter, I think is what they set there. And I don't think they billed individual residents there. So there's some of that out there, I can assure you.
But in terms of, in this area, I know Town Mill and Summerwalk are billed water by the water authority, and then we in turn get the individual meter readings, and then we'll in turn bill for sewer and garbage.
Which is not really a money-making proposition for us, is it?
No.
We don't ever want to do that again. Never.
But, Mr. Mayor, one thing that does need to be clarified, if we're going to say that we're going to do utility lines inside the gate, we need to say it's under the normal rules, meaning it's only up to the meters. Because we would then have individual meters, and that would all operate normally then.
I don't understand what you
We wouldn't be responsible for service lines. We wouldn't be responsible for anything.
We may have been too broad in our statement.
When you say we're responsible for utility lines, that could,
What we mean is behind the gate,
Oh,
under
okay,
normal
yeah.
circumstances. Normal rules apply behind the gate is all we're really talking about.
Up to the meters.
Okay.
So let me attempt this. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the zoning application, rezoning to R4, with the conditions as agreed to in the email from the developer on Tuesday, January 16th, with the additional condition to number 8 stating that an HOA will be required and will be responsible for all road and street maintenance, and the city is only responsible for utility lines repair and maintenance up to the meters of the homes. General terms as usual apply.
I think we're talking about street repairs when there's a problem with a water line.
Right.
Yes.
Or sewer.
Obviously, they're maintaining them in general, so that,
Yes. So relies. Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, and that included, your motion included the other items about the
Yes.
Facade and so forth, and the minimum square footages and so forth.
Yes, the motion
Okay.
was
All
to,
those items are
with
on
those
there.
conditions
Okay.
as agreed
Just
to
wanna
in
make sure.
this email, Tuesday, January 16th at 5:07 p.m.
Okay, we do have,
Items 1 through 10 with number 8 being amended to include the additional language.
Correct.
right. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you. Sorry we have so many questions there, but it comes with the territory. All right. Next item. Discussion of possible action on designation of acting city manager, Mr. Peppers. Okay, we have a motion. We have a motion to approve Nathan Ingram as the acting city manager in the absence of our city manager. Let's see. Bill made the motion. Ms. Wilson seconded the motion. Is that right? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, all members voting for the motion. All right, Mr. City Manager's report.
I have 3 items for you tonight. I've tried to put them in order in front of you. The first is discussion on the abandonment of Hill Street Circle and Circle Court. I've given you a map to help you identify this area. If you look at the map that's on the aerial view, you'll see the highlighted areas that would be abandoned. This is related to the project at Academy Street, the former grammar school building, and former mill office. The owner of that site, if you flip to the other side of the map, owns everything that's shaded or everything that's outlined in green. My understanding is they have everything that's outlined in red under contract. One of the things that they would like to do is they would like to be able to, as they develop the area in green, shift some of that dirt back into the area in the red to help level out those lots. I did speak with Mark Harris and let him know that that's something that the city could definitely entertain, the abandonment of the highlighted area, those streets, which is the back side of Hill Street Circle, and that little side street is actually Circle Court, but that it would have to be conditioned on the actual acquisition of that property and ownership of that property. Their goal is to pull their land disturbance permit. In fact, I think it was picked up today. Everything's been signed off on their land disturbance permit as it relates to the area in green, but they'd like to be able to shift that dirt one time as opposed to having stockpile it in a certain area and then move it again. Of course, I mentioned to them that my concern is the fact that they don't currently own the area in red, and typically when we abandon a roadway, we abandon it to the owners on both sides. They do know that the lots that are on Hill Street Circle, as it's adjacent to West Main Street, there are 2 structures located off of those three lots. One of those is a flag lot, and there's 2 other lots on Hill Street Circle. They do know that one of the requirements of their development would be to make that portion of Hill Street Circle 2-way, and at the end of it, they would be responsible for some type of turnaround access on that road, whether it be a cul-de-sac or a hammerhead into that street. I had a conversation with the city attorney on the matter, and we're both kind of in agreement that you could agree to vote at an upcoming meeting to abandon the roadway conditioned on the ownership of the ownership of the lots on the other side of the roadway within a certain period of time. If you'd like to condition it on an overall site plan that includes an understanding of what they're doing with the dirt as it relates to those red lots, that'd be okay as well. But I told Mr. Harris I would bring this up at least to get some idea from you on how you would like to move forward with the situation. Mr.
Grant?
If we did consider this, and they did do this and move the dirt and then make those changes to Hill Street Circle, could it also be conditioned on, or is that automatic that it would be to city standards?
Yes, they would have to build out that portion of Hill Street Circle that's got to be two-way and have some type of turnaround to city standards.
And if we abandon it, does that mean that it becomes a private street to that development?
No, we would not be abandoning the portion of the street that's not highlighted. So they would have to make the improvements within that portion that's public right-of-way.
So that the area that is highlighted, that street, does that become private?
Basically, it would be an entry into their development. It would be private property.
I mean, you can't abandon these until they're not single-family people living in these things other than them, the developer. Right now, there are people that own those houses and other people living there.
And they have that area under contract, but they haven't closed on it yet. And so that's basically what I relayed to Mr. Harris. That's great that you have them under contract, but we can't technically abandon a road
when it's providing access to
when
people.
It's providing access to multiple properties.
When they have have closed on those other properties, they will then own both sides of that road anyway, right?
And then we'd want to abandon it to them.
Right.
And so, again, to clarify, on that section where they own both sides and we abandon it, then they become responsible for that road.
Correct.
It becomes a private
It's their land, and they're going to build over it.
street from that.
Or it sounds like the plan is it won't even be a road, really. They're going
There
to
won't
use
be a
it.
street there at all. It'll just
They're
have
gonna-
land
okay.
that they can develop.
They're going to put dirt on it, slope the dirt into the street.
And the area of that road that's not highlighted that goes by the two lots out to West Main Street,
That would remain public.
remain public and they're responsible for the improvements
That
to
is
that.
correct.
And that would be a condition
That's correct.
of abandonment as well.
I think all you can do is say you're willing to abandon when all that happens. I'm starting to try to actually abandon with conditions. I think you wait until the circumstances are where they have to be, and then you just abandon it.
I think if the council were willing to state that,
We will do that when those things
Right.
happen. So.
Okay. Are you looking for something from us?
no, I think as long as it's kind
I
of consensus that that's
I
the
can't
process
see
you
there'd be a
wanna follow.
problem once they've closed on those properties on both sides of that street. I mean, up to a point where they own both sides, and they're willing to put a cul-de-sac and make the other portion of that street two-way. Nobody's really harmed at all, and so I don't see that would be a problem. Anyone else have a comment on that? Okay.
Okay, the second item I had mentioned to you, and I sent this out to you last week, basically taking the top 3 priorities from the retreat and listing the tasks that would be associated with those in a relatively chronological order. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on that or take any input you might have on those particular items.
I thought you did an excellent job, and so the only question I had is when do we get started? So
I've already had a conversation. So every 2 weeks we have what's called an owners meeting on the Jones Building project. So I've already had conversations with Lordak Sargent and Garbett Construction about the fact that we now know what we want to do with Phase 2 on the Jones Building, and we're working on setting up a time right now with Lordak and Sargent to have a meeting so we can sit down with some initial concepts and give them direction on where we want to go from a design standpoint. and then they'll be bringing back to us basically a change order reflective of what that work would cost from a design standpoint. We'd take that change order once they complete the work, take it back to Garbett, and get Garbett to do a change order to add that in as an additional task as it relates to the current project, and then be ready to go. So both of them, when we were talking on the phone, expressed the desire to move on it as quickly as possible to have as much efficiencies so that we're not ending one section and then starting another section. If we can do things simultaneously, that's their goal also.
I appreciated the the notation of the funding sourcing on all of those as well. And so I guess just the second question is sort of when and how can we communicate these goals and the tasks to the citizens, to the public, and if everyone here is happy with those notes. And we talked about posts on the website and possibly newsletter, things like that.
Absolutely. I think this would be a great use of the first newsletter. We've already been talking about that, so we would be happy to do that and maybe relate some story with it so that it's a little bit easier for the public to understand.
Anything else?
The only other item I have, it's 3 items. They are change orders as it relates to the Jones Building project. As you recall, we finished the demolition phase of the project. Part of the demolition phase was an exploratory phase where some things that you can't see until you pull things out could be adjusted for. So there's 3 change orders. One is an owner change order, one is a CM at risk change order to the contingency, and the third is a change order related to the architect's fee. The architect's fee is simply where we are taking a task that was part of the overall project that we had contracted with Garbett for, which is civil engineering, and shifting it back to the architect to handle. After looking at the scope of the work that needed to be done, it made more sense to have that task fall under the architect than under the construction manager at risk. So the Lordak and Sargent page you have before you is really just a transfer of funds from one contract to the other. The owner's change order is related to a few changes that we made based on the project after we got in there. For instance, the original project called for the installation of temporary lighting throughout the building. We decided to remove that from the project as we knew that we would be moving forward with a second phase. There was no sense to purchase temporary lighting and electrical to install in the building if we were going to be putting in permanent lighting at some point in the near future. So that was backed out. We had in the initial design of the project for them to remove the mechanical units from the roof, do what roof work needed to be done, and then reset the mechanical units. We determined that we didn't want to keep any of the mechanical units based on age, so that's been accredited out. But additionally, since we're not replacing them, we have additional roof repairs to the decking that have to be done so that that roof structure as a whole. So basically, the change order as it relates to the owner is that of all of those changes, there's about $16,000 in additional cost from changes we've made to the project scope based on looking at things on the interior. The second change order, which is the change order as it relates to the construction manager at risk, are items that were either understated or that they have to change within various pieces of the project. So for instance, because we are making some changes to the roofing structure, there's some additional cost on their end that they'll need to make on damp proofing the roof. And so that's noted there. They're taking their items out of the contingency line item to cover those additional costs. So the total of those deductions for some additional metal stud framing at the south elevation, additional marble window sills in the south elevation, and that damp proofing is $48,000 that they will be pulling from contingency that's already budgeted for in that total price to do that work. So that's kind of the overview of those 3 change orders. Because they are change orders to a contract, they will need council approval for the mayor to be able to execute and us to move forward.
So is this something you need?
I would say if we can act on it, that's the best case scenario, because it's all related to a project that's ongoing, and I'd rather go ahead and get them moving on those particular items.
Okay. Mr. Grant?
Just one question on the change order for the at-risk contingency. So it doesn't change the total, and that's why we went with at-risk, correct? And so
Correct.
contingency, and going forward, if they tap in and go over the contingency, they are responsible for that, correct?
Unless it's something that we ask them
Unless
to
it's something that
change.
we do, then it
Correct.
becomes an owner change order like the other one, basically.
That is correct.
Okay.
So their contingency is built in case they miss something when they were doing the initial scope of the project, and then they have to eat that out of the contingency. If we make a change, which is what we've done on the first one, we have to make a change, or we have to eat it, or we have to change something out to equal it in the project scope.
And then on the one with the architect, say that comes out of the general contractors, took it out of that and put it in the architects, is that what I heard you say?
You'll note it on the owner change order, the first contingency. If you look down at item number 9, on the one that says owner change order number 1, it says design fees, credit for civil design allowances, $25,000. If you go back into the statement from Lord Act Sargent, you'll see 2 items on the second page. The total of their change order is $26,860, which is $1,860 more than the $25 that's in here. Part of that, though, is because the architect has had to add on a couple of additional dollars for redoing some of the design where we took out the mechanicals on the upper floor. So we've shifted $25,000 out of this project, which we took as credit, towards the architect, and there's another $1,800 in total work there for that design of those areas.
So does that affect the at-risk total, or is that a different?
So if you take the total on the 12 items that are listed on the change order on the owner side, we took credit there.
Took a credit there.
But because of some extra roof work that we had to do, it cost us more than what that credit came off. Does that make sense?
Right.
So our change in the project made the total price of the project go up by $16,000, even with the $25 move over.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
So in total, it's a $40,000 change on the project, but most of that's relative to the roofing. We're just not seeing as much of that change on the guaranteed maximum price. We're seeing an increase more on the architectural fee.
Anyone else? I think that's a pretty small change order, to be honest. Comparatively so. We need to monitor them and keep up, make sure we don't have too many. But that's a very small percentage on a $3 million project there.
And to be 3 months into the project, the biggest issue was in this project, until we got in there was a question of what additional work we might have to do to shore up the structure. And so now that everything has been removed on the interior, we all feel comfortable that there's not going to be any more significant change orders. I mean, you can always have an error or something, but there shouldn't be any more significant change orders because everything is available to us to see at this point.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 3 change orders as presented.
Second.
Mr. Grant made the motion. Mr. Young seconded that motion. Is there any other questions or discussion regarding the change orders? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. You got it.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Voting yes. Okay. Each year we have a number of committee appointments at the first of the year. A lot of the committees, the term ends December 31st. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And under the various committees, some will be going off 1 year, some may be going off the next year. And in fact, some committees we have, they're annual appointments. So I'd like to nominate the following for continuation, at least on These are folks initially have agreed to continue to serve on the committee for another term. And on the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is a 3-year term, those whose term would have expired December 31st but continue to serve until their replacement or they are reappointed occurs would be Glenn Bliss, Frank Farley, Harry Johnston, and John Clark. And so I would nominate them for another term. Under the Canton Building Authority, which is a 4-year term, Barry Bishop, Mike Chapman, and I would nominate Bill Henry to replace Annie Bonner, whose term ended and he moved out of state, as a matter of fact. Bill Henry has graciously accepted that nomination, so we're certainly pleased that I think you'll be a great addition to the Canton Building Authority. The Canton Development Authority, there are 3 up for a reappointment and nomination: Jeff Brown, Bill Kent, and Bob Riley. These are 4-year terms. Canton Main Street Board, we need a new member to replace Judy Bishop, and I would like to, this is actually a mayoral appointment, so I would like to appoint Irene Stout to be a member of the Canton Main Street Board. And we appreciate your willingness to do that, because you've already been working with them for some period of time, I think, anyway. Under the Main Street Board, also Stephanie Joyner had stepped down, but not really nominating anyone to replace her at this point. We can do that in the future. But Megan Quinlan, Stephanie Joyner was representing the Historical Society in that capacity, in that slot on the Main Street Board. Megan Quinlan works with the Historical Society, so she can fill that slot as a representative of the Historical Society on there, with Stephanie having stepped down. So I would nominate, really there's no need to even do anything on that one at this point. Canton Tourism, these are annual appointments: Betsy Graham, Bill Magruder, Joyce Swindell, George Murphy, Lane Wood, and it is my understanding that, even though it's in yellow there, I believe our clerk talked to Frances Vaughn and she was willing to serve another term, so I would nominate all those individuals whose term is expiring. The Canton Tree Commission, which is a 4-year term, would recommend the reappointment of Linda Swamline and Pat Stewart. The Downtown Development Authority, members up for reappointment: Zach Kell, Rebecca Johnston, Stan Rogers. Doug Key has indicated that he would like to come off of that. His term has expired. Bill Henry has agreed to serve on the Downtown Development Authority, which I think, once again, he'll be a good member on that as well. Historic Preservation Commission, a 3-year term. Joe Sellers and Jane Shelnutt's term is expiring, and so I would recommend nomination of those 2. For Impact Fee Advisory Committee, Dwight Pullen, Glenn Bliss, James Bagwell, and Doug Williams. Recommend that they be, I nominate them for reappointment. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, my member, the Parks and Rec Board is composed of an appointee from the mayor, and each council member has an appointee to that board. My appointee has apparently actually did resign some time back, and I would like to add a new member as my appointee is David Johnson, Johnsson, and he has agreed to do that. Under the Planning and Zoning Commission, that's a 3-year term. We have for reappointment Richard Kemp, Leon Gramling, and Bill Magruder. Susan Paget Harrison stepped down off of that, so I understand her term apparently was expiring anyway at the end of December, so I'd like to nominate Leon Stafford, who's here, and I appreciate you graciously accepting that. And he has been working with our stakeholders group and on our comprehensive update of our comprehensive land use plan. So he's already kind of in the know on that. Now, I'm not sure if he would need to come off of that or not. Would need to. Do you think so, Kent? Would he need to come? We would. Okay. Good. Okay. Great. Thank you. Stormwater Advisory Board. These are annual terms. Jane Shellnut, Jeffrey Adams, Barbara Holloway, Steve Paget, James L. Spears, Ben Key, and Bill Kent. I would recommend that board be reappointed. And that's all that I have, and that's the nominations that I have at this point. Certainly, as we go further, if there's other nominations or appointments that you would like to have, particularly on something like the Main Street Board, I think there's other slots there that if you would get those to me, we'd be happy to work with you in filling any at-large slots there. One thing I will say about some of these committees, I think we definitely need to sit down at some point and look at some consolidation perhaps, and also some elimination of committees if we can do that. Unfortunately, we have a number of boards like the Canton Building Authority, the Canton Development Authority, and several other boards like that, authorities like that, that were established solely as a vehicle for debt many years ago in what's been called backdoor general obligation bonds, in which while the city can't go in debt, the city government can't go in debt beyond the end of the year, an authority can. So the city sets up an authority. That authority then issues the debt that's needed for a particular project. And then the government, the governing authority, has an intergovernmental agreement with that authority to pay them an amount equal to their debt service. So that's why they call it backdoor. And number one, anything that says backdoor, you better look out for, okay? Because there's something up there, I got to tell you. It's as opposed to a general obligation bond, which requires a referendum of the voters in order to have debt beyond the end of the year. But a backdoor GO bond does not require that referendum, but it's supposed to have a mechanism by which that debt can be paid off. And back in '07 and so forth, you know, the debt on a number of these projects and so forth that we had, it was predicated on impact fees and sales tax, both of which impact fees dissolved and went away because there wasn't any building or anything going on. And sales tax actually went down too during the Great Recession of recent years. But that's got nothing to do with this. But the bottom line is it would be good if we could consolidate some of those committees. Some we might, some we can't because they still have debt associated with them. And you can't get rid of them as long as they have debt with them. But anyway. All right. Do I have any discussion regarding these nominations? Do I have a motion to approve those nominations? Mr. Goodman made the motion. Do we have a second? Ms. McGrew seconded the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you. Okay. One question I had, you were talking about the Jones Bill. Do you feel pretty strongly they're on kind of schedule where they should be at this time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. They are.
That's good.
In fact, I would just mention that Mr. Crosby and I were in there yesterday. It was very cold, but we were in there yesterday and looking at some of the flooring that was in there, and actually they were working on some of the heart pine millwork around some of the windows on the second floor. It really is starting to come together.
Great.
And I would mention to you, while we were meeting, the schools decided not to have session tomorrow, so there's no school again tomorrow. So if you need to drive around, it'll be a great day to drive around.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We do have an executive session to discuss a legal issue and potential litigation. So I will entertain a motion to go into executive session, but we will not be coming out for a vote or anything. So you won't have to hang around for that. Do we have a motion to go adjourn to executive session? We have a motion, Mr. Grant. Mr. Goodman seconded. Mr. Grant and Mr. Goodman. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay. Thank you. Thank y'all for being here tonight. Appreciate it very much.